What's up? This is the Cody Porter Sports Show. What is that? I don't even know yet. Gonna find out. It is October 19th, 2023. Will this go on forever? Probably not. Will it continue a week? I sure hope so, but maybe not. I have no idea. I have no idea where this might go, what this might do. I've always wanted to do something like this. Sports has always been my thing. Never the most fantastic athlete, but sports has always been kind of the thing that I love, not the person. I mean, we all love people, schmeeple. The thing that I've always loved is just kind of in general been sports. And before I get into the actual topics at hand, I just want to go like why I'm doing this. You know, it's kind of, I think a lot of people don't do things like this just because they don't want to put the time into it, which I really don't want to. I'm as lazy as they come, but some people don't want to do things just because they feel like they're not worth doing or they won't accomplish anything. And I know there's a good chance this will accomplish nothing other than, getting 25 views on YouTube, which is pretty cool. It's 25 more views than the average person has on YouTube, I'd say. But for me, sports has always been my thing. I don't have any real hobbies. I don't have any things that I do. I don't knit. I don't collect coins. I don't jog, if that's not abundantly clear. Sports has kind of always been my thing, and I saw sports, growing up a little bit, just being on TV, always saw sports. But I remember the first time I was like, oh, this is something incredible. And it was 2008. I was 8 years old, watching the American League Championship Series, and I really had only, for the most part, seen football. I knew baseball existed, but I never watched it. And I watched the final game of the 2008 ALCS between the Boston Red Sox and Tampa Bay Rays. I thought, oh, Tampa Bay. That's pretty close to me. I want Tampa Bay to win. And sure enough, I watched the game, and I just kind of start watching as like a little kid and think, this is so cool. And I watch Akinori Uemura step on second base for the final out to send the Rays to the World Series. And I'm like, oh, this is a big deal. Like, people care about what's going on. This isn't just like some game. This is like affecting a lot of people's happiness in Tampa, in Boston, everywhere. Like, this isn't just like some game that these guys are playing. This is a little bit more than that. And I go and watch the 2008 World Series, and the Rays lose, and that sucked. I still didn't quite grasp it. I'm like, sports is pretty cool. I'm going to keep watching sports. Sports seems pretty fun. And I play a little bit as a kid growing up, and just every time I see a story unfold, you just can't help but fall in love. I really think so. I think that sports is the closest thing to real life you get. The stories that sports tell, I think, are crazy, and I think that's the reason that I kind of fell for it. It was just it grabs me. I will watch sports that I have zero interest in and just get hooked. I literally do not care an ounce about soccer whatsoever. But sure enough, the last Men's World Cup, I watched all of USA's games because, just a part of it was rooting for USA, but me never caring about soccer, still just watching that and just kind of being like, oh, like I want that. I'm like literally looking up the rules of soccer I don't understand, including offsides, which I kind of just now figured out what offsides really meant in soccer. But it just, whenever I see any sporting event, I kind of just get attached to what's going on. And that's, I guess, the reason why I'm doing this. I got nothing else better to do, really. But it's something I've always wanted to do. It's something I want to keep doing. And so that's why I'm doing it. And why not? And if I get 25 views on YouTube, sick. Whatever. We're 4 minutes and 20 seconds in, nice, to this video. So let's get started. And I'm going to start with college football. Got a pretty sick slate of games this weekend. You can go back on my TikTok page. I've picked games, about 6 games every single week. Each week picking games, both against the spread and straight up. I don't have my record in front of me at the moment. But straight up pretty good. Against the spread, I'm terrible. I'm absolutely awful picking games against the spread. But straight up, been pretty good this year. I'm going to keep it up. It's week 8 of the college football season. Let's get into it, right? Let's get into it. Biggest game of the weekend, Penn State at Ohio State, 6-0 versus 6-0. The first real big clash in the Big Ten this year. And it's definitely going to shake up the rankings after this week. Going to shake up the Big Ten. Going to shake up the college football playoff outlook. As I look at the stats and I try to see, who has the edge going in this one. Ohio State clearly has the edge. They're the home team. They're favored. So obviously, if you don't know, that gives them the edge. They're the favorite. That's what Las Vegas, that's what the bookmakers, they think Ohio State is going to win. But if you look across the board, they're pretty even at most things. Let's look at their records. Penn State at 6-0 has beat West Virginia, Delaware, Iowa, and UMass at home, and then Illinois and Northwestern on the road. Ohio State 6-0. They beat Indiana, Notre Dame, and Purdue on the road, and beat Youngstown State, Western Kentucky, and Maryland at home. Not an incredible schedule either way for either team. Ohio State did have Notre Dame at Notre Dame, big game, and that probably what bumps up their strength schedule a little bit over Penn State. Penn State's strength schedule so far is at 79, and Ohio State's at 53rd. But that's really mostly because of that Notre Dame game. Without that, you're probably looking at right around the same. Both 6-0, both take care of business. And you look at some of their rankings across the board, and they're pretty similar. Defensive yards per game allowed, Penn State's number 1, Ohio State's 7. Offensive yard per game, Penn State's 43rd, Ohio State's 34th. So defense, offense, they look pretty similar. So that's not a clear outstanding edge one way or the other. So look at special teams. Neither of the special teams have been fantastic. Kick return yards for Penn State on average 18.5. Ohio State 15.1. Punt return yards, Ohio State 12.4. Penn State 8.2. So it doesn't seem special teams, there's a clear advantage to either one. So let's look at penalty yards per game. 46.6 for Penn State, that's good for 45th. And Ohio State penalty yards per game, 52.1, 61st. Penn State a little bit better, but it's not a clear difference there. Plus, Ohio State's played an extra game on the road. As the road team, you're probably going to make a few more mistakes. So that kind of balances out. Red zone efficiency. How often they score in the red zone. Penn State 94% of the time to Ohio State's 83% of the time. So there's a bit of a gap, 11% there. Definitely isn't nothing. But still, Ohio State over 83%. Again, did play a tougher team in Notre Dame than Penn State's played. Turnovers, which I think is the biggest one. The only big difference in these teams. Ohio State's only not committed. Forced is the word. Ohio State's only forced 7 turnovers. Penn State's forced 13. So that's a pretty big gap there. Penn State's almost double the amount of turnovers forced that Ohio State has. Last week, Ohio State, no Emeka Ibuka, no Mayan Williams, no Travion Henderson. If the three of them are all out, I think if the books knew all 3 of them were out for sure, the line would shift closer to 0, maybe even shift into Penn State's favor. Ryan Day said yesterday that he's optimistic all 3 will play. So all 3 will play, mostly healthy, with the weapons they already have. They're favored, and I'm going back and forth and trying to figure out the red zone scoring sticks out to me, the turnovers stick out to me, and those make me want to lean a little to Penn State. But in the end, Penn State is, on offense, very balanced, very even between quarterback Drew Aller and Nick Singleton and Kaytron Allen on the ground. Ohio State, they just have those names. They have the huge names. They have Marvin Harrison Jr. They have Emeka Ibuka. They have Maya Williams. They have Travion Henderson. They have those names. They have those guys that we know in big games can explode because we've seen it happen. Penn State is kind of just taking care of business so far this year as they need to against teams they should beat. Drew Aller hasn't played a tough opponent, hasn't showed that he is, an elite FBS quarterback yet. Ohio State has those guys. And that's why in this game, I'm going to lean Ohio State. I'm going to lead them to win the game and cover 4.5 points. I think it's going to be a fantastic game. I think it's going to be just a brawl. Penn State played UMass last week. You kind of think, are they going to be physically prepared to play Ohio State? I think they will. I think Coach Franklin will have them tuned up. And I think this game has a lot to prove for both coaches, really. Coming into this season, just not even just fans, but all spectators that have some sort of voice are saying, if Ryan Day loses to Michigan, he still could get fired. I mean, you're not going to fire an 11-1 coach that's taking a CFP that's won a national championship in the recent history. But if Ryan Day loses to Penn State and Michigan this year, they don't get into the CFP. And while he doesn't get fired, the he can't win big games crowd is going to get louder and louder. For Coach Franklin, James Franklin, Penn State, last coach to really succeed at Vandy. He hasn't done great things at Penn State. He's done good things. He is yet to finish in the top 5 at the end of the season. He's only won 1 Rose Bowl. I think he's only won 11 games twice in his 7, 8, 9 years at Penn State. So this is a huge game for James Franklin. I think if James Franklin loses to Penn State and Michigan this year, fans of Penn State will be like, it's not even like Ryan Day. Ryan Day has won big games, just not recently. Coach Franklin doesn't win big games. And if he loses those 2 this year, that's just going to get louder and louder. So, massive game, great game. Cannot wait to watch. Hate that it's on at 11 Central Time. Wish this would be a night game or even a later afternoon game. But Ohio State, I like them at -4.5. Let's move on. Tennessee going to Alabama. Last year, epic thriller, one of the best games of the season. Tennessee wins on a field goal, 52-49 in Neyland. The crowd storms the field. They take the goalpost. They put it in the river. I mean, just an electrifying game. Hendon Hooker, Bryce Young, they go crazy. It was a fantastic game. This game will be much different. No Hendon Hooker, no Bryce Young. Both these teams just kind of look like, good. They don't look fantastic. They don't look like they did last year. Both of them have 1 loss. Alabama's 6-1. Tennessee's 5-1. Oh, no. Alabama's 8.5-point favorites. That seems like a lot between fairly even teams. Total offense, Tennessee's 32nd, Alabama's 86th. Total defense, Alabama's 15th, Tennessee 17th. So 2 pretty good defenses. Tennessee has a bit better offense, I'd say. You could say a pretty much better offense. I think Jalen Miller's starting to come into his own, starting to get a lot better week by week, I think, with his massive progression. But this game is a home game at Alabama. Last year it's in Neyland. I think Alabama's looking for revenge. I think the stadium will be crazy. I think Saban wants to win this game real, real bad. I think Alabama does win this game in the end, but I think Tennessee covers 8.5. I think that's a lot with these defenses and how Alabama's looked as a whole on offense this year. I don't think they have looked incredible for most of the season. So I think 8.5 is a lot. I'd like Tennessee to cover 8.5, but Alabama should win this game. Then you got Duke at Florida State. 13.5. Again, this seems like a lot if Duke has a healthy Riley Leonard, but they shouldn't have a healthy Riley Leonard. I'll be honest. High ankle sprain. This will be his 3rd week of recovery since he sprained his ankle against Notre Dame. I never really understood the high ankle sprain. I'll be quite honest. I took a athletic training course in college. I was definitely told about the difference between a regular or low ankle sprain and a high ankle sprain. All I got out of it is that a high ankle sprain is worse. But 4 to 6 weeks seems like a lot of time. That's the average timetable they give on high ankle sprains. I sprain my ankle all the time. If I rest it right away, if I can get it propped up, iced right away, I can be back on it in, should I be on it? No. I can get back on it in about 12, 14 hours. I can be back to pretty much full ankle health in 3, 4 days. No, they say high ankle sprain, much worse than a regular low ankle sprain. But these guys are they're not pro athletes, but they're elite athletes. They're in the ACC, the SEC. They have fantastic trainers. I'm sure that they are getting as much rehab and protection and whatever that they need to get these injuries. High ankle sprain, I feel like, shouldn't take 6 weeks. But for some people it does. Riley Leonard, if he plays, won't be 100%. But if he plays, I like Duke at plus 13.5. If he doesn't, Florida State minus 13.5 has to be the play because Duke backup Henry Bellin last week, 4 for 12. Duke can kind of just dominate the weaker levels of the ACC with their tremendous defense and great run game. I mean, Riley Leonard is a great quarterback, not because he has the greatest arm in the world, but because he can make the throws he needs, and he's a great runner. Henry Bellin last week, 4 for 12 for like 109 yards at a 60 and a 40-yard completion for 2 touchdowns. But against this Florida State defense, this elite Florida State defense, if they're just going to sell it on the run, if Henry Bellin's in the game, and they're going to make him throw, and I think Duke has no chance if that's the case. I mean, the line is set at 49.5. If Henry Bellin plays, I think the under is certainly a good play there. Florida State's defense is just so good. Duke's defense is really good too. But if they have to constantly be on the field against that Florida State offense because the Duke offense can't keep the ball, I think there's a good chance, second half, end of the first half, end of the second half, that bend but don't break is eventually going to break, and Florida State will find the end zone. But with Riley Leonard, someone who's, even if he can't run fully healthy, he can make better throws. He's a much more of a threat with the arm than Bellin is. If Riley Leonard is playing, I like Duke at plus 13.5, but if he's not, I like Florida State. Regardless, I like Florida State to win, and for the time being, not knowing about Riley Leonard, I will take them to cover 13.5. But if on Saturday they say he's starting, I think that Duke plus 13.5 would be a good play. And I didn't say a whole lot about Florida State. They've done what they needed to this year. I don't think they've looked as good as they should have. I think I was very high on Florida State going into the season. I thought they'd be very, very good. I think they've looked good. I don't think they've looked elite yet. Keon Coleman, goodness gracious, he has been fantastic this year. He's got 7 receiving touchdowns. The second 2 receivers each have 2 receiving touchdowns. Keon Coleman has been tremendous for Jordan Travis, and their defense is just ridiculous. But they haven't really super duper impressed me yet. And if Duke had a fully healthy Riley Leonard, I think this would be that game to impress the entire country and say, hey, Florida State is, viable number 1 option overall. I don't think they've looked as that viable number 1 elite team yet. But if they go out here, if they just demolish Duke, regardless of who's playing quarterback, that they will start to look like that viable number 1 team. Then we got Utah, USC. USC obviously coming off a thrashing last week to Notre Dame. Looking at this game, USC is a 7-point favorite. If we look against the spread, USC is just 2-5 this year against the spread. Utah isn't great either, 3-2-1 against the spread. Utah without Cam Rising just hasn't been really an offensive threat at all season. They've got a great defense. They can, they're going to score 14 to 21 for sure with the guys they got playing quarterback. But most defense just aren't really scared of the quarterback options that Utah has without Cam Rising. So you can look at Caleb Williams. You think he has to bounce back after just a pretty atrocious game last week, and I think he does. USC has got the number 2 scoring offense. Utah's got the 109th scoring offense. I just don't think Utah's going to be able to do anything. I think USC should. They're going to be angry. It's going to be a home game. I think USC should beat Utah pretty handily. 7-point favorites this week. But my one thing to say about this game, it's not really about this game. It's about Caleb Williams. How unlikable has he become? He comes in for Spencer Rattler at Oklahoma, middle of the Red River rivalry, and just brings back Oklahoma from a deficit against Texas. He's loved in Oklahoma. Everyone's like, oh, look at this freshman just playing great. And then Lincoln Riley becomes a scumbag by leaving as soon as the season's over, at least to most people, most college football fans. As soon as that game's over, immediately going to USC of all places. And then Caleb Williams falling on the transfer. He goes out last year, dominates, and I think this is what he's done so far in his career. He's dominated when he needs to. But lost 2 games last year to Utah, lost to Tulane last year in the bowl game, lost last week to Notre Dame. Yeah, he throttles the teams that he needs to, and then it seems like big games he hasn't yet been able to really get it done. And the news came out this week right after their Notre Dame loss that Caleb Williams or his agent or someone has been telling NFL teams that he wants to own a percentage of the team that drafts him, just Absolutely ridiculous. I think everything that comes out more and more about Caleb Williams just makes him more and more unlikable. I know he's got he does like some things with like some kids who have, he does some good things. Good. What you should do. But just like the way he painted his fingernails last year against Utah, it said F Utah on him. The more and more the things he does, people dislike him, and the worse he plays, the happier it makes other people. And I don't think he's got a real likable personality here going in. And he's been saying that he might not even go to the draft next year because he doesn't want to go play for a bad team. Well, I hate to break it to you, but when you're deemed as the top 1, top 2 quarterback, you're going to go number 1, number 2, number 3 overall to a team that sucks. And they're also not going to give you a percentage of the team. So I don't really know what's going on with Caleb Williams. I know I don't particularly like him. And I kind of enjoyed watching him suck against Notre Dame. But who knows? Maybe he's going to turn around here at the back half of the season, become a real fan favorite for non-USC fans. Who knows? We'll see. After Utah-USC, Clemson at Miami. At first I was really liking Clemson. I was a lot higher on Clemson preseason than where they're sitting right now. Clemson just skating by most weeks, it looks like. They beat Wake Forest last week 17-12. I thought Cade Klubnik was going to be the guy at Clemson. I was wrong. At least this season. He could come back out next year and just dominate after a full year as a starter in Dabo's system, but it's just this year has not been the year. They beat Wake by 5. They struggled for a while against Syracuse, then pulled away late 31-14. Last week, Miami lost by 10 to North Carolina. North Carolina kind of dominated that game, and that kind of ended up being a 10-point game. Like I said, I started on Clemson, but the more I thought about it, I'm thinking Miami should have gone into last week's game 5-0 against North Carolina, and it should have been a battle of the unbeatens. Stupid coaching mistake by Mario Cristobal. Miami ends up losing in the last seconds to Georgia Tech. Then they lose last week to North Carolina. They go from being, 5-0 to play North Carolina to now they've lost 2 straight, going to play Clemson or at home against Clemson. And I mean, how are you going to go from should be 5-0 to losing 3 in a row? You just can't have it. If you're Mario Cristobal, if you're the supporters of Miami. So the more I think about it, the more I want to go Miami. But then now Tyler Van Dyke might not be 100%, probably won't be 100%, will play. I think they said today he will play. But there's no chance he'll be 100%. And what I was reading, I guess, yesterday was that I'm surprised this doesn't come out more on college campuses of all places, that just students were taking pictures and we're seeing on campus that Tyler Van Dyke had an ace bandage all the way from his ankle above his knee, and he was extremely hobbled and barely walking. And I'm surprised that's the first time I can ever really remember hearing reports about how a player looked on campus. I feel like that should happen more. But apparently he's extremely, as of Wednesday, extremely limited in his walking. Maybe he's just doing that as precaution to help heal whatever he's got going on in his leg. But if he's, below 75, 80%, I like Clemson. And that's kind of the thing. You don't really know what percent a player... the coach can say something. The player can say, oh, I feel 100%. You don't really know what a player is like until he goes out there that first drive and takes his first hit. Or when he's got a leg injury, he's got to scramble out of the pocket. You don't really know what percent they're at until that happens. But I'm assuming Tyler Van Dyke will be ready to play Clemson at home. I'm going to take Miami to win the game, and I'm going to take them at +3 as underdogs. This game really comes down to Tyler Van Dyke, I think. His health. Not even I think if he's healthy, he'll be fine. Because Clemson just hasn't really shown us anything all season. Just hasn't done anything to make us believe that they should win any consequential games as of right now. That could turn around. They could come out and beat Miami by 21 this week and look like the Clemson of old, and people are like, okay, Cade Klubnik, took half a season starting, but he's here. Dabo's figured it out, whatever it is. But for this weekend, I'm going to take Miami. Why not? Then the final game I'm picking outright, Oklahoma State at West Virginia. Oklahoma State started the year 2-0. Then they lose back-to-back games against South Alabama. They lost to South Alabama 33-7. Then they lose to Iowa State 34-27. And those first 2 games they won, they struggled mightily against Arizona State and Central Arkansas. Just struggled to beat those teams. So a really rough stretch out the gate for Oklahoma State at 2-2. But then they play Kansas State and Kansas, two of the better teams in the Big 12 outside of Oklahoma, Texas. You kind of go Oklahoma, Texas, Texas, Oklahoma. Going into the season, you go Oklahoma and Texas, and you go Kansas, Kansas State, and then kind of everybody else. And they beat Kansas and Kansas State to come in this game at 4-2. West Virginia has kind of been a lot better than most people expected. They beat TCU, Texas Tech, and Pitt. They play much better than expected. Coach Neil Brown has got them much more prepared than I think most people thought they would be coming into this year. Garrett Green has been electric from time to time. He has a really great game and then a kind of mediocre game for West Virginia. He's got 6 passing touchdowns and 5 rushing touchdowns. He's just as a danger on the run as he is to throw the ball. And so I think this will be, not expected going into this one, Oklahoma State, West Virginia, kind of a battle of like the bottom dwellers in the Big 12. But the winner of this game will have, 5 wins and kind of be fighting for that 3rd, 4th spot in the Big 12 when it comes time to consequential bowl games. And so West Virginia is the home team. They're 3.5-point favorites. And I think I would kind of reside with my pick with whoever the home team is in this one. And it happens to be West Virginia. I think Garrett Green is a pretty good quarterback. And 3.5 doesn't seem like too much to me. I'll take West Virginia to win the game as -3.5 favorites. And then the last thing in college football, last week on my TikTok picks, I made my picks and then I said, okay, this isn't a game anyone really cares about, but the pick I really want to make was Arizona +7.5. They had just covered so many games. They had played so well and just come up short. And those are the teams I really like picking, the teams that, they don't have high expectations or maybe they have low expectations and they just consistently play better than they should or just barely lose these games, but they're always in them, especially with higher competition, which is what Arizona was doing. And they go, they have that, double overtime thriller against USC. They're going to Washington State, 7.5-point dogs. I love them. I picked them 7.5-point dogs. I really did think they would win outright, and they blew out Washington. It was 44-6 was the final, I think. And so my pick of that realm, of that genre this week is South Carolina, Missouri. South Carolina they don't really fit the mold of what I said before. Sort of. South Carolina I think, is supposed to be a lot better than they are, at least in most people's eyes. I thought they would be a lot better preseason than they are right now. They lost a close one to Florida last week in the waning seconds, a touchdown pass from Graham Mertz to Ricky Pearsall. South Carolina just 2 wins this year, not looking great. Missouri, way, way ahead of where everyone thought they would be. Most people thought, it was them, Vandy, Florida at the bottom, and Missouri just played fantastic so far. They took care of business last week against Kentucky to jump back into the top 25. South Carolina, 7-point dogs. I don't know if I'd say I like South Carolina to win. I like them +7. I really do. I like South Carolina +7 against Missouri. And, we'll just go ahead and see what happens to that. I really think Arizona was just bound to win one and just absolutely destroy Washington State last week. South Carolina, it gets real desperate if they can't at least play close against Missouri this week. So I really like South Carolina at +7. That was college football. I want to dive a little bit into the NFL, just kind of, not a breakdown of everything, but just kind of see what's going on in the NFL. AFC East, crazy good. Miami and Buffalo. That's 2 of the top 3 teams in the AFC right there. And, Miami's offense, crazy, crazy good. Buffalo, whoever they're playing, that's how good they play. If they're playing Tyrod Taylor and the New York Giants, they're kind of just playing like them. But if they're playing the Miami Dolphins, they're playing like the Dolphins. It doesn't really make a whole lot of sense. They're playing up and down their competition, which is something that can hurt you along the way of the season. But if you just get hot there at the end, Buffalo can be, just as good going into the playoffs as Miami and as Kansas City. And then the Jets are right there at 3-3, right behind them. Sit at 3-3 thanks to an incredible defense. Zach Wilson, everybody kind of just hates him in New York because high draft pick, supposed to be amazing, kind of just looks like he sucks. Then you get Aaron Rodgers, first pass attempt of the year, tears his Achilles, but last week he was walking with out a boot without any crutches 5 weeks after 4 weeks, 5 weeks after tearing his Achilles. It was just absurd. It's a 9 to 12 month recovery. The most recent crazy fast recovery of an Achilles was Cam Akers in 2021. 5.5 months from Achilles tear in training camp to playing, I think it was in week 18, the final week of the season, for the Rams. If Rodgers plays this year, because Akers was training camp. It was before preseason, and he played final week of the season and played the playoffs for the Rams. If Rodgers gets back to the Jets and can actually play, not just sit there and hand the ball off, but if he can actually play this season before the playoffs, that would be absurd from an injury recovery standpoint. That would be crazy. I dislocated my ankle. I didn't put full weight on it without a boot until 6 weeks later. He's 5 weeks after tearing his Achilles. He was on the field, walking around, throwing a football. If the Jets can be within 2-3 games of a wild card spot with 4 games left, and Aaron Rodgers comes back, or if they can somehow find their way into the playoffs and Aaron Rodgers is there for the playoffs, the Jets are just as dangerous then as people thought they would be coming into the season. That recovery, if Rodgers plays this year, that will truly be insane. It will defy all laws of medicine, if there are any laws of medicine. Patriots, AFC East, they suck. They're just really bad. One win. They look terrible in every facet of the game. Let's move on from the East to the North, the AFC. Looks like this is going to come down to the wire. The last place team in the division is the Bengals and Joe Burrow. They clearly started off the season very poorly. Joe Burrow looked terrible to start the year. It looks like he's finally really starting to recover from that calf injury. You think maybe if they just sit him those first 2 weeks and get him really fully healthy without any contact, just rehabbing all the way, maybe they look a little bit better than they are right now. But it really looks like Burrow's coming back into full form. They're at the bottom of the division at 3-3, but you got the Browns at 3-2, the Steelers at 3-2, and the Ravens at 4-2. And the Browns and the Steelers, 2 very unimpressive offenses, but 2 great defenses so far. Ravens top of the division, just Lamar Jackson, classic Ravens, just always seems to be a really good regular season team, regardless of what's going on there. And so that division looks like it's going to come down to the wire. I think the Steelers will fade out first just because their offense has been just so poor. Then if it depends on what Deshaun Watson can do. It seems like he's really taking his time coming back from his shoulder, rotator cuff, shoulder, whatever injury he has. He was cleared 2 weeks ago, has decided each week not to play because he didn't want to. If Deshaun Watson comes back at all this season and plays the way he did in Houston, pre-terrible allegation, terrible person, Deshaun Watson, if he can come back and play like that, the Browns are just as good as every other team in that North Division, I think. But I think the Steelers will fade first. I think the Browns will probably fall after them. I think they'll stick around a little bit longer. But then I think this division really comes down between the Ravens and Bengals. Winner obviously gets in. I think second place gets a wild card pretty easy. And depending on what the Browns do, they could mess around and take a spot of a wild card. Who knows? Otherwise, in the AFC, the Broncos are terrible. Sean Payton and Russell Wilson, Sean Payton coaching Russell Wilson makes me really think that Drew Brees was even better than we know that he was. Because Sean Payton cannot do anything in Denver. And Russell Wilson cannot do anything in Denver. He was terrible last year. Everyone said, oh, terrible coaching. Well, they bring in Sean Payton, Super Bowl winning, great head coach. He sucks. Super Bowl winning, great head coach. He sucks. Russell Wilson stinks. The Broncos are just really bad. And Russell Wilson has an insane contract. Sean Payton has an insane contract. I don't really know what the Broncos do. If they don't have what it takes in the building right now to turn it around, the Broncos could be staring a really bad few years down. It could be game over for Broncos for a few years if none of this works out. And then let's go to the NFC. Looks like the Lions, the team in the NFC North, just took care of business last week against the Bucs. Start to finish, 20-6. Offense sputtered a little bit every now and then, but their defense looked incredible. The question mark kind of all year has been why You pick Jahmyr Gibbs in the first round, but David Montgomery's your workhorse. It doesn't really seem to matter. The Lions are kind of just going along, and look like a top 3, top 2 team in the NFC, depending on what you think about the 49ers and their offense. The Lions are great. Vikings and Bears not good. The Packers are okay. I don't really know what Jordan Love is yet, although we probably should know more just based on although not as a starter, he's been in the league a few years. Packers might be okay, might sneak up and grab a wild card. Don't really know, but the Lions should run away with that division there at the end of the season. The NFC South, wide open. Bucks are 3-2. Falcons and Saints both 3-3. Panthers are 0-6. They stink. But Bucks, Falcons, Saints looks kind of like that AFC North division where you're going to have 3 teams vying for the top spot, and the second place team probably vying for a wild card. The Bucks, I think, have looked a lot better than most people thought. As a near native of Tampa Bay, as a Buccaneers fan, I had optimism, and also as a fan all along of Baker Mayfield, I've always liked Baker Mayfield. They've looked better than most people were predicting them to. Falcons and Saints both 3-3. If the Falcons can overcome Desmond Ridder, I mean, he just does not look like a great quarterback. They have a minus 21 point differential, and I think most of that is just because of the ineffectiveness of Desmond Ridder. They've looked great in the ground. Their defense has been okay, decent. And then the Saints have kind of just been hit or miss. I mean, destroyed the Patriots last week, but also didn't score a touchdown until like the last second against Tennessee. Derek Carr play a great game, play a bad game. Jameis Winston, I mean, I don't even know how he's really still in the league, but he still does things every once in a while for the Saints. So that NFC South, wide open. I think that'll go down to the wire. And, I hope the Bucs win it, but I mean, I don't think there's a very large gap between those 3 teams. I think they're all bang, 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 and wherever the chips fall, is where it will for the NFC South. Then you go to the NFC West, 49ers, wrap the division pretty easily. Seahawks and Rams definitely going to fight for a wild card spot. Seahawks, I think everyone coming in, they had a great year last year with Geno Smith. Most people are thinking that they can't really follow it up, bottle it up that great season kind of out of nowhere with Geno Smith when Drew Lock was supposed to be the starting quarterback all along. It ended up being Geno Smith, and he just had a career year. Seahawks having a fine year again this year, and the Rams playing a little bit better than I think most people thought. And Puka Nacua, and now they're getting back Cooper Kupp. Rams Seahawks definitely going to be viable options for an NFC wildcard spot. But the 49ers, even without people thinking, without the weapons, Brock Purdy kind of looks like trash. I didn't say that's what people say. But 49ers should be fine regardless because that defense is absolutely insane. And then last thing in the NFL, rookie quarterbacks. As a Gators fan, I didn't think Anthony Richardson should have gone to the NFL. He got drafted 3rd overall, so get your money. I mean, fair enough. Go get it. When he's played, he's looked great. But I think he's played 5 games, and he went out with injury in 3 of them, or 4 of them, and he just had season-ending surgery. So he's kind of going to be behind in his development already. It's supposed to be a year of trial and error, just let him go out there and let him figure it out. Well, he only ends up playing 5 games, and it's kind of going to be a go figure it out again next year. And so you're kind of behind in the development. But I think of the 3 teams that drafted quarterbacks, 1, 2, 3 last year, I think the Colts kind of have the best build around. The year before they had a terrible year last year, Jonathan Taylor was great. The O-line was incredible. The defense played great. And then they just had a really bad year last year. I think Anthony Richardson, if he can stay healthy going into next year, the Colts should be a problem for the Jaguars and the Titans in the AFC South. But can he stay healthy? We don't know at this point. He couldn't stay healthy at Florida. He had season-ending surgery here, not even halfway through his first NFL season. So we just don't know what his health will be like. But when he's played, Anthony Richardson, electrifying. C.J. Stroud, Texans, looks like the best rookie quarterback. Looks like one of the best rookie quarterbacks you've seen in a very long time. He's just slicing and dicing down there in Houston. Doesn't have a great team around him, but he's playing well regardless. And then Bryce Young in Carolina, he's played decently. He was the first overall pick. Goes to the worst. I think the Texans everyone thought the Texans were the worst team of the bunch. But then you got Carolina, and they just look awful. I mean, Bryce Young has played decently, but everything else at Carolina is just bad. And I don't really know if their coaching staff I think Bryce Young, regardless of how good he may be, the team that is built around him and the coaching staff, I could see him having to restart with a completely different coaching staff in 3 years, which would suck for Bryce Young because I think he has played well, but that's just looking like where it might be. That's all I got. First episode, the Cody Porter Sports Show. Got a lot of college football, got a little bit of NFL. Let's go over those college football picks one more time. Penn State at Ohio State. I got Ohio State winning it. It's 4.5-point favorites. Then Tennessee at Alabama. I got Alabama winning, but I got Tennessee at plus 8.5. Duke at Florida State. For the time being, I got Florida State winning and covering 13.5. But if you want to bet on that game, I think you see what Riley Leonard is at, if he's playing, if he's not, before making that 13.5 bet. Then you got Utah and USC. I got USC bouncing back as 7-point favorites to win that one. Miami and Clemson. I think Tyler Van Dyke will be hurt, but I think he'll be healthy enough to overcome the odds as a 3.5-point underdog and beat Clemson. And then Oklahoma State at West Virginia. I got the home team as favorites. I got West Virginia minus 3.5. That's week 1, episode 1, Cody Porter Sports Show. Thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. See ya.